welcome to the Museum of Graffiti's Daily Artist Talk.
Cool. So good to be here. Thanks for inviting me. It's like an honor.
Well, I am more than happy. I'm a fan of your work, as we all are, whoever is logging in. And in your honor today, I dressed in an official African pattern.
I
But
see
Faith,
that. It looks Ghanaian.
yeah, Faith, before I begin, I'm going to switch the screen over so I can read your bio, so folks can get a bit familiar with you. Liberty Dew, who is widely recognized as Faith 47, is a South African artist known as one of the world's preeminent female street artists. Her journey into art began in the streets of South Africa in 1979 as a young graffiti writer while taking on the name Faith 47, the number being a reference to her grandmother's numerological theorem. In 2006, Liberty began a nomadic journey, which has brought her to create works in 39 countries, and in 2017 saw her relocating to Los Angeles. Her evolution from street artist to multidisciplinary artist has created a fluid yet solid bridge into the contemporary art world. This explorative approach has led her to develop a broad range of artwork, which we'll be reviewing today. This ranges from immersive new media installations and hand-sewn wall tapestries, deconstructing notions of value and place, to sculptural bronze works investigating hierarchies of power, paintings in a variety of fine art prints. And I would add so much more, but I want to jump right into our presentation. And so Faith, what I've always been fascinated with in this culture is how graffiti has transmitted itself from New York, our 5 boroughs, to the rest of the world, and to your town, all the way to South Africa. So if you could tell me about the beginning as to how you've come into this culture, the writing culture, and what was your entry point? What were the things you were referencing, and the kind of work you were exploring?
Well, you know, I got into graffiti through Wheels 130, and we were dating. It was about 16, 17, and he introduced me. Also, I was already into like punk and you know, goth, like alternative kind of subculture, and hip hop as well, like skateboarding, skateboarders. So the hip hop culture was really interesting to me, and it was really big in Cape Town, and it was one of the few youth cultures where you had people from like different backgrounds, from different demographics and race backgrounds and different geographic areas that would like get together and paint or like rap or b-boy or whatever. And so yeah, I was really interested in that. Like, you know, we grew up in like a really conservative, crazy apartheid state, and this was like a culture that gave you like a doorway into like exploring what South Africa is, or was, you know, at that time. So yeah, I mean, I went into neighborhoods and areas that like I would not normally go into. I was rolling with like the Enemy crew in Mitchell's Plain. They would take me out around there, and yeah, I saw a lot of things that like I wouldn't normally experience. So for me, it was very experiential. But yeah, Wheels, I mean, his crew, they were more like they were like the white like train riders, the YMB crew. And yeah, so I had my son. We had a son in 1997, and we were staying at my mom's house, and then, you know, like he would go out and paint trains, and like his friends would come and stay over after they painted trains and stuff like that. So it was like a really crazy time, really, like being a young mother and like try to make sense of that, but then also like we were like painting and like, yeah.
So let me ask you something. What, in terms of being a female artist and part of this rambunctious group of kids who were just riding around, writing and everywhere, was it strange for you? Did you feel out of place? Was there resistance to you joining them?
I mean, I'd say in the beginning for sure, like you kind of have to prove yourself, and I do remember it was hard. Like, you know, Wheelsy was like, I've had confidence. Like I've had like people who believe in me and like spend time schooling me and spend time going out with me and like. But there was a point where it was hard. None of the guys would paint with me, and like I had a friend Dominique that I used to live with, and we would go painting at night, and me and her, just to kind of like prove that we could do it, which is totally crazy because it's really dangerous actually.
It's speaking
But
to that. If you, I'm sorry, but it's speaking to that. If you look at this image, which is quite compelling to me, um, folks, in terms of the danger involved, if you look carefully at the lower part of this image, it's an abandoned electricity factory with a kid just kind of swinging just with over the ground, which is dropped out. It looks like a reflection at the bottom, but actually that's dropped out.
oh yeah, that's a abandoned like old electricity plant up on the Eastern Cape. We went on like a road trip, and yeah, I have like a deep love for abandoned spaces and urban exploring. I never realized when I started this, oh, that's a really old piece. I've stuck it in there because I don't think a lot of people remember, well, maybe some people remember this kind of like old graphic style, but when I started doing characters, that was like an example of like the kind of illustrations I would do. Um, yeah, no, it's been a super long journey and a super interesting path, but yeah, super experiential.
Well, which to the point that, this speaks to going someplace uh, where you, with your background, in many ways was this whole foreign world, right? You didn't have, going into these shanty towns and these poor neighborhoods, and to very simply bring art and joy to a community. And not just that, but a message in this one
Well,
case.
I was also interested in crossing those boundaries because, South Africa is a really contentious place. There's a lot to be answered for there. It's like super complicated. And as a white South African, I mean, you grow up just with this kind of collective baggage that I don't know, I guess at that point, I felt like I wanted to cross those boundaries. I wanted to paint in like all neighborhoods. I didn't want to feel like was only allowed in certain neighborhoods or that I couldn't, cross those barriers. So it was very intentional. And yeah, and I think, you spend like a full day or like a few days in like a street corner that you would never like spend time in, and you get to know the people who live there, and you get to like feel like the humanness of like all the different communities, and yeah, it was super eye-opening.
And what about
um
this whole notion of going away from the public and finding these abandoned places, these places that are hollowed out by trauma?
yes, exactly. I love them because they are harlowed out by trauma, and I think society, humans have a lot to answer for the way that we kind of that one says, well, hold on, this picture, I'll get there, but
Sure.
I think there's a lot that we discard. We build these big empires, and we create a lot of waste, and there's all this like decay within our ideas of progress. And I find within a lot of the abandoned spaces and the things you find there, and just the energy or the writings you find on the walls and things like that, that there's this kind of underbelly in society. And so this has always interested me because, the loudest voices are not representative of of everyone. And yeah, that one that we're looking at now is in Johannesburg near the train line, and it's just this community of people who are like sleeping under the bridges there. But it was part of the Freedom Charter series I did, and that was 2010. So with that series, so the graffiti kind of started morphing into more like words that I wanted to write in spaces that could like interact with the environment. And then I took the Freedom Charter document, which is like one of the fundamental documents from the ANC when they were kind of planning what kind of society we wanted to live in. And we took the slogan. I took the slogans and I placed them in like I did about like 10 to 12 pieces around the whole of South Africa in that. But we're jumping. That piece is alchemy, and actually I just did that
Well,
last
one of the
year.
things I like, and I'm again, the thread in your messaging is really interesting because you go from graffiti letter writing to messaging and quite you know, decorative messaging in these abandoned spaces. But you make a transition that's quite interesting from, you know, the typography to like very clear and succinct messaging in places like this, power, and
Yeah.
juxtaposed. Yes, please.
What? Sorry, were you going to a question?
No, well, it's interesting because the writing is juxtaposed. You know, I guess I don't know what kind of a power plant this is, but it speaks more to the power of industry, perhaps.
Yeah.
The,
So that one's in Colombia, actually. No, I got into art like self-taught, like basically just got into graffiti by default. Like it wasn't like an intentional path. I took something that like gave me a lot of energy, and like I was pretty rebellious, and it kind of was a way for me to vent and a way for me to explore. And so yeah, I think after a while I got a little annoyed with the culture because although it gives you like a really, and especially when you're young, like formulating an identity, like that's really important, you know. So, but then after a while, you're just writing your name over and over, and I totally like love like illegal graffiti, and I still think the culture is like awesome. But like for me as an artist and on my progress, like I needed to do something that was like a bit more like conceptual for myself and expressive. And then and I got criticized for it, and because graffiti, although it's like quite subversive, is also very traditional and comes with a lot of rules and regulations. So I remember at the time like you couldn't use a paintbrush, stuff like
right, I
that.
remember those days. But
Exactly. So yeah. So anyway, I really loved the lettering, and I loved the form of lettering. I was really bad when I started. Like I could not put lettering together. But yeah, now I love it. Like I'm busy designing a font right now, actually. And yeah, so
yeah,
I've explored it a lot, like just matching phrases with environments. Like this one at the bottom with the car is the people shall share in the country's wealth, and that's in Khayelitsha in Cape Town, where it's like probably I think it's like 3 or 4 million people living there, but I have to check that. But like it's just a big like shanty town. It's massive. But that's part of the Freedom Charter and the people shall govern. But that's like 2010.
and so in terms of the, like you said, the shift in your work going from, let's say, graffiti centric lettering to this kind of very clear typography messaging, having a purpose, was there any kind of resistance amongst the people you were surrounding yourself with, or did they get that there's a value of connecting yourself to the greater picture of humanity?
Oh, I mean, this one you're looking at now, and some of these like more this very square font typeface. That is that's recent. Like that's a series Levascara that I'm working on now, which also includes banners and that. So and then I still do a bit of like the calligraphic stuff and just the line work where it's like but whether or not I get response, yeah, I don't know. Doesn't really
It
matter.
doesn't seem like it matters to you.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. What matters is
No.
that you experience these places on your own physically, and also that, yeah, your messages are rather succinct and powerful. And this one I found really interesting, that you have this giant mural that you painted, of course sanctioned, I imagine, and all of a sudden, I would imagine at the end, you bust out the nuclear power banner.
Exactly. And yeah, I just made that in the basement while we were there was like some rainstorms and that. So I made a big banner and we sewed it together. Exactly. And those are the kind of things that actually make me inspired, you know?
Right.
So
And
it
this
is
kind of,
about being inspired and having, like, life is hard and life is full of stuff and we have to express ourselves. So it's really just about finding that spark, you know?
yeah, and this kind of protest messaging is in the history of the South African apartheid movement. It's in the
For
DNA.
sure. Like when one of the reasons graffiti also appealed to me was because, my sister and I, we grew up we would get around on the train lines, like on the trains. So I would see all the stuff coming on the trains and on the track sides, like every day when I went to school. I would also see, like slogans from like apartheid era slogans, which I remember very distinctly. And also I remember seeing the band Crass, like their fight power, not people, fight war, not wars stencils and that. I didn't know that was a punk band until like I found them later, but like that kind of stuff really did influence me, and that was way before I even kind of knew what the concept of like art was. Yeah, and I've been documenting stuff like that for years as well, just slogans and things you see on the streets.
The chant writing, tell me about this. And what does it represent?
So, Chant is actually the name of my solo show that was supposed to open on the 1st of April in South Africa. And I went to Johannesburg in January and spent some time there. And we went around the city and we put chant up like in lots of different places. So it's a slogan and it's a chant because it's repetitive. And I wanted it just to be like a kind of precursor to the show, but also like a something that makes you question, like something that it's like almost like political, right? Or spiritual at the same time. Like this like energetic kind of yeah. It raises something, it raises something.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the double entendre there. Tell me about Joburg. And you did this wonderful project underneath the freeway here with these portraits.
Yeah,
I
this one's like 2014, and actually it's in Durban. I was commissioned by the Bridges department, but there's a big informal trading center there. Taxi ranks, bus ranks, like it's like a very intense area. When you go to Durban, they have a few areas that they like kind of, if you go stay at like a Airbnb or something or a hotel or whatever, they'll like give you a map and cross out areas that you shouldn't go into. And so this is one of those areas where they recommend you don't go because it's like pretty dangerous, which is, but it's also like bustling, and it is dangerous because we saw like we saw some vigilante stuff there. We saw people getting mugged, like, it was pretty intense area for sure. But also like full of life and just incredible. And I did portraits of some of the traders in the area, and I wanted to give them, like, to honor them and give them like a real like space that they felt it's theirs, a sense of ownership, because the city had been also trying to like pull the shopping mall there, and there's like a whole big anyway, it was one of my favorite projects. We did seven pillars.
it's fantastic. And the at the end of the project, how were the subjects responding to the murals?
Yeah, I mean, I hoped that, and I think that people really took ownership of the murals, and that was kind of the idea, that to create something that is owned by the people there. And of all the projects I've done, I would think that that might be the one that was the most successful in that. I know I've had people go there and tell me that they've been like told that, given a tour by someone who said they painted the murals and stuff like that. So, it's all good. People making some money out of it.
Yes. So I'm going to take a second, and I want to welcome everybody who's just joining us for our daily talk at the Museum of Graffiti. We are joined by Faith 47, and we've been, covering her early works from her early days as a graffiti writer up to the more recent projects, and this one particularly in Durban, which we were discussing. But I want to take us to another country, to India, and you painted, instead of a name or a message, you left lotus flowers. Faith, did I lose you? Let's bring you back. Pardon the interruption. We'll bring Faith back on. Hi, Faith. I wanted to venture off to another country, to India, where you were painting these lotus flowers. Tell me, what prompted the switch to leave these very subtle paintings in these communities?
Actually, it was, I don't know what year that was, but we were at Art Miami and it was totally crazy. I was sick, really jet lagged. I had committed to go to India to do a mural for this project, and I got there and I was exhausted and I just couldn't do a big mural. I was just kind of sick of doing big murals as well. And so I said to them, look, let me just like do something like street painting. That's what I want to do, you know, because I really miss that sometimes, you know, the big murals, they're not quite like the same. So they were cool with it. And yeah, I just spent the whole time just walking around the city and painting these lotuses. And, you know, like all my work, there's like some symbolism in it of, well, you know, the lotus flower is, the lotus grows out of the mud, you know, it's like finding your enlightenment or your growth through difficult times kind of thing. So yeah, that was
so
was
as
a
you're
nice
painting
project.
these things, and people out of curiosity ask you about them, do you explain the genesis of that the lotus rises from the mud?
Hey, you're in India, you don't need to explain that. It's that's like inherently kind of Eastern philosophy right there.
Beautiful. Um, Again, you know, one of the things we said at the top was that you are a very diverse artist in both in your thinking and practice. And you work in series, very interesting series. And this one that you shared with me with the automobiles, the abandoned automobiles, is quite interesting.
Yeah, I love that project. It wasn't like hugely popular because it's kind of dark in a way, but I loved it. And it was basically like painted a whole lot of broken down cars, um, and the car being symbol of kind of this consumeristic dream, or like progress, this notion of progress. And I painted them in areas that had like really dirty backgrounds in South Africa. It was also a video project, so I worked with a good friend of mine, Dane Dodds. We made a whole video piece out of it, but it's basically about like assimilating the trash that we throw outside and not separating ourselves from like the disturbance and I guess the waste that we create, you know? Yeah.
But what's interesting about these cars is, and again, the themes that you're working on, social consciousness, social responsibility, that there is something quite, you know, violent in the image. Maybe perhaps it was not just abandoned, but there was car accident and some kind of action happened, and you have to witness it. You're there to witness it. It's static. One of the things too, which is interesting for me, in terms of how this theme plays out in some of your studio work, are in works like this, right? Which are really fascinating for me with the animals. This one says Outlaw AK-47 with two, I don't know what breed of dogs these are, but you know, there's a very hostile attack entanglement between both the subjects. And somehow in there, the graffiti, it says rich kid. And of course, we were discussing this earlier, and we were talking about, does this tie into the narrative of South African oppression?
So this piece that you're looking at is actually one of the pieces for the South African solo show that's been postponed. But it's the background is out of apartheid police files. So that gives you a bit of context. The scrawlings, like the outlaw and the rich kid, that's all from gang graffiti that I've been documenting over the years. And the violence is something that's been handed down, sure, like since colonization, through apartheid, through into the gangs, into like the current day situation that South Africa's in, which is currently reeling now with the COVID stuff. It's like I think countries each have their own psyche, and which needs its own specific process and healing. South Africa is specifically violent and contentious and difficult.
So how do you, I mean, if I
And
can
it's
interject?
also it's also fucking amazing, like the most amazing place. But at the same time, it has a really hardness to it. And yeah, I think the pain and that kind of reality shows through in my work. And yeah, that's just, that's where I grew up, and I feel it, I see it,
You know, what I was gonna ask, or say rather, and ask, is that I get it and I feel it in my own country. And now that you're here in America, do you feel? I mean, of course, there are certain liberties here, but we are inherently a very violent country, and vicious country, and on some level, but yet just an amazingly beautiful and giving and freedom-loving country, but with strings attached. How is your stay here in this country over the last period of time that you've been here?
yeah, look, two very different countries with some strong similarities. And one of the things that I miss about South Africa is like a very deep culture that I kind of feel is lacking here a little bit. And I do feel that's maybe why there is such a kind of crisis here, because it's a new, like a new world country, So there's like a little bit of a lack of like depth, and that might be also the education system. Sorry, what was the question again?
Well, we were talking about your stay here in America and how you see, because you're coming from a place that historically has been oppressive, and there's a huge imbalance in society, and it's pretty blatant, right? They didn't hide
Yeah.
it. And in the
Yeah, no, South
U.S.,
Africa is super intense,
yeah,
super intense. But at the same time, people are super open to talking about the conflict. And like, I feel that like it's really much easier in a way to talk about race and like be quite upfront about these things in South Africa, although it's like uncomfortable as well. But in America, I do feel like people skirt around these things a bit. And um, yeah.
and so when
I
you
mean,
bring up
America has also got like similar
it,
issues.
so when you bring up these really potent and politically loaded imagery in your work for the marketplace specifically, is is this something that is admired, or is there a shock value to it that collectors and galleries are like, wait a minute, I don't know?
Yeah, I mean, that's always a tricky thing, huh? Like when you're making art to sell, I know what sells easiest. But like these works are new works, and they're works for my South African show, and I specifically for my show in South Africa decided that I was not gonna make works because I thought they would sell. I'm gonna make them because I need to make them. And so the whole show is full of works that I don't know how they will be received. But also I'm hoping to like work within a more contemporary like art market in terms of that, because I think a lot of the mural stuff, because you're working in public space, and that often the work gets a little watered down, or it's like a little bit decorative, which can be problematic too. So, I have things to say, and
You do,
yeah, I have to
and
make money in that too. But yeah, I think, so you have to kind of dance around it and find your comfortable place.
absolutely. And to segue to the murals, while you may say they're decorative, they are they're so important in connecting us to nature when we are in a city environment. These concrete jungles, let's just say. Uh, you,
Yeah.
you you really highlight nature in a very beautiful way with these murals. What was your intention when you started doing and focusing on the series of animals?
Yeah, this piece is actually in Harlem in New York, and it's about immigration and the migration of animals and the similarities between the two. You know, the idea of movement of humans not dissimilar to the movement of animals. Animals don't see borders, do they?
No.
So, but I like to paint the animals in urban spaces because well, I'm a bit of a pantheist, like pagan. So I think that we have disconnected ourselves from the animal world, and we are part of the animal world. So I think we need to live sustainably, and I think we need to have this connection to our food and like what we're eating. And so I think what's happening now in the world is like an absolute tragedy, and we have to do what we can to like bring that back. I mean, these rhinos were painted in China. I think that was 2011. I did a couple more as well, but it was like ghosts of rhinos, and the poaching of rhinos in South Africa is pretty horrendous, and it's all for like kind of libido medicines and things in Asia. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. But yeah, at times they're so poetic in their spaces, right? They're dreamlike, like this one, this Pegasus unicorn, perhaps,
Yeah,
coming
that's
out
in
of.
Tunisia.
Mhm.
At that time, I don't know what year that was, but at that time I was wanting to bring in this kind of mystical kind of elements from other worlds to just kind of ignite like um, yeah, other realities.
And again, you return to these themes over and over again. Uh, what's with the fascination? Does every animal represent something different to you personally, other than the obvious, in
Yeah,
terms of
I
how
mean,
you?
I do. That was in the same year as the Tunisia one. That one's in Hackney in London. But I see the animals also as reflections of ourselves. So sometimes the emotion that you feel that I'm bringing or feeling with that painting is something that is reflected in us. Like I've always got like two layers or a few layers, um, and bringing like the African lion into London with like hunger written on it. And, there's layers to it. You can read it on any level depending where you're at or what you're into.
It's really quite fascinating to see them come to life in these urban spaces. And again, what I appreciate is the painterly quality, the improvisational quality of the painting. It's not kind of like your decorative painting. It's really quite beautiful, actually.
Yeah, and like often a bit of aggression or pain. Uh, Somehow seems to and roughness. I like raw textures. I hate a white wall, like, or like just a plain wall. It's so boring to work with. Like I want something that has already got like a soul to it that I can speak to. um,
This particular mural is fantastic because you did a great addition to this. Afterwards, you did a projection mapping to it. Tell me about this project. Where was it?
this is in Cincinnati. Was it last year? Anyway, exactly. The colors on this look a bit funny, but with this one, it's a good example of how I'm not so interested in making things pop all the time. And sometimes it's better, like sometimes when you do that, the work looks better in real life as well. Like this wall actually looks better in real life, I think. But I've been working a lot with my friend Inka. She does like a lot of projection and that. And we've been wanting to do a projection mapping wall for the longest time. Nobody wanted to fund it, but eventually Blink Cincinnati, they were happy to fund it. And yeah, it was super exciting. Just to, you know, I'm interested in new media and in ways of exploring different forms of mark making, mediums, and so
But also
yeah.
in this particular painting, the woman on the horse, she's so heroic. It really says something to the public about the power of a woman.
Yeah, what ties into three thematics, I guess. The one is the flag, which is kind of the white flag, which is tied into the Unbound series, which has taken a few different forms. And of course, the divine feminine, which is something that is not necessarily about like women, but about feminine energy and balancing this kind of polarity that we have, which is out of whack right now. And also this kind of warrior, you know, like a
Mm-hmm.
peaceful warrior. This idea of, you know, we have to fight for what we think is just, you know.
And one of the things on the theme of women, you have done a beautiful series in Abandoned Spaces with women, which are quite poetic and romantic, but also there's a bit of uh, heaviness to them, isn't there? Like, a
I
weight.
mean, yes, there's weight to it. And I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm not that interested in making things that are like light and fluffy, you know, like there's, there's like a solemn, well, this painting, I love it. That's in Greece, actually. It's one, I really wish I was doing more abandoned spaces at the moment, but it's one of my most favorite places kind of to paint because you just, it's quite a sacred act, you know, and there's no one around and you can really paint whatever you want. Like if I have to get like somebody contact me to paint a commission or something, like they're not going to approve that generally. So a lot of the stuff that I do in abandoned spaces is really, that's what I want to paint. Like, and I don't care like what anyone thinks.
Do you bring
Um,
this into your studio work at all?
yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of crossover from studio to street to video to like a lot of the work informs each other for sure.
Yeah, and we could see this play out somewhat in the shrines that you've been making.
Yeah, well, that's quite an old one. That's actually 2015 Jonathan Levine Gallery, and I've done a few different shrines. Actually, well, it started because I was collecting all this stuff compulsively, like discarded objects and things that I would find either just in the street or like in when I was exploring spaces, and I would collect them and make them into artworks or make them into like these big kind of shrines. And it's, I guess it's about like reevaluating what is mundane and what is sacred. What are we throwing away? Like, what is this saying about us, you know? So this is an abandoned building in Hong Kong. And yeah, I did a few shrines in like abandoned spaces. And then a lot of the stuff that I worked with in those spaces was the things that I would take into the galleries. I also did one at Beyond the Streets in Los
Yeah, I remember
Angeles a
that
few
one.
years back. Yeah.
And again, not to be pigeonholed, I love how broad you are with your ideas. And in terms of this piece with video performance art, uh, tell us about this. What year was this, and when did you produce this work?
So yeah, I know. I give myself a lot of freedom to just go somewhere. And so again, with Inka Kenzia, who I spoke about earlier with the projection mapping, we wanted to choreograph a performance piece. And it's something I still want to explore more. The first time we showed it was in Berlin with an incredible South African icon, like dancer, Mante Rabane. And basically, it's also bringing in the flags again and a lot of video projection and several screens that she kind of dances in front of and behind. And bringing in notions of immigration and migration and the movement of people and animals. Do you have any more of that video where there's more of the video elements? Yeah. So you can see like there's a lot
Yeah.
of military components and
Hmm.
kind of like fascist dictatorship and the human spirits. And we and then the last time we performed it was in Cape Town at Design Indaba. I had to do a talk, and then we kind of followed it up with the performance. So yeah, we choreographed it and put the video together and conceptualized the idea. We had to go through a lot of war footage, and I just remember like when we were doing the research period, like me and Inka were just in tears actually, because the footage that you find is just um, pretty devastating. But yes, that's called Aurum.
It's really quite, you're right, the imagery is quite powerful because it's not just one nation, it's many nations. It's an ideology that's been suppressing people for centuries.
Yeah, the whole piece is about I think 7 to 10 minutes. Yeah.
Another interesting work you did was this video montage. Tell us about this montage because it deals with really prolific issues of today, gender, uh, you know.
So I was traveling a lot that year, like a lot, and I wasn't getting a lot of studio time, and I was really interested in playing more with video. And so whenever I would spend time in a place, I would make, and often with a friend of mine who might be making video and like collaborating with them, or I would make a short video piece. But they're very sensual actually, and a lot of them, it's almost chaotic. Like there's like one of them is just like trees, like you know the trees, the treetops kind of like moving, like simple
Hmm.
ones. And like there's one of a bird decaying and getting eaten by maggots. But then there's one of like people kissing in a nightclub. We spent a night like filming people kissing and like so they're quite chaotic. But when they all come together and you're like looking at them, it's like this kind of montage and like bombardment of like life. So that was we showed that 3 times, like in art fairs, and um, yeah, just kind of like every time you explore a new medium, you like find a new way of speaking.
So now this, do you intend to do more projects like this, or is this just a one-off for you?
No, I love working with video, and I have one in progress, which is going pretty slowly, but it's like yeah. I think I will always work in like some form of new media.
Right. And this one you shared with me is fantastic. The hologram is really super cool.
Yeah, so the person that I collaborated with that is Lyle Sprong. He's a really good friend of mine and like incredible like maker of things. And we've created the moon hologram, and we did an earth hologram as well. So this is in the forest in Sweden. It's kind of bleached out in this video, but again, site specific and immersive. So we would take people in groups at nighttime, um, in the dark in the forest with like just some flashlights a bit to get there, and then they would see this like three-dimensional holographic moon in the forest and just spend 3 minutes there, 4 minutes, and then leave again. And nobody's really said anything. Like, it was all in silence. So yeah, thinking of ways to, how do you make someone like feel, you know?
Yeah, that must have been quite something to experience that. And again, bringing the moon to people, what a powerful idea. It's pretty amazing. So Faith, we've really kind of did a quick time lapse through your career and your work. I want to go back to you, and this wonderful picture of you and your kid, because you did mention your kid, right? And that here we are in a very challenging time. And the one gift you gave your kid was exposure to art and your art and the world. And he's a practicing artist.
Certainly is. And we're in quarantine right now in Yucca Valley together. Um, yeah, exactly. So I said to you before, like, I was like 17 when I fell pregnant. And so we incorporated Kir into our life. We'd take him to go paint. And, it wasn't easy at all. But like, he just like, as soon as he could hold like a paintbrush, he was painting, and we would go somewhere and would be like, oh, here's the wall for you, like do something. So he's been doing that like, since the very beginning, and kind of followed this whole process with us. That's one of his earlier paintings. And yeah, his dad is a tattoo artist too. So he's just grown up with a lot of creative people around him, and that yeah.
And so now that you're quarantined, and you are, like many of us, trying to figure out and deal with, how do we explain this to our children? How do we accept this for ourselves in our practice? Uh, you shared some works that you were just exploring in your practice. Why don't you tell us about this? These, during the quarantine, you're taking yet another radical turn in what we're used to expecting from you.
Well, actually, I was just split up with my partner and was about to get on a flight to South Africa for like 2 months. I was going to have my solo show there that I've been working on for a good like year and a half, 2 years. And after that, I was going to spend a couple months in New York. I wasn't going to come back to LA for some time. And then everything just like shattered, as we all know. So yeah, we got quarantined in LA, and we got my son on the last Emirates flights over from South Africa because he was there. And now we're kind of displaced, to be honest. We're renting a spot in Yucca Valley for another month, and then I'm not actually sure what we're gonna do. We're just taking it 2 months at a time. And
So
yeah,
given
it
that you
has
have
definitely
this,
been stressful, but also I think there's a lot you can find in this time to grow, you know?
right? What fascinates me is that given that all this is happening, you have the focus to make uh, these drawings, which are so detailed and disciplined. And the title of this one is called Creative, The Creative, pardon me. What are these? What are these symbolized? Why these during this period?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I haven't been very productive at all, and I haven't felt very inspired, especially in the beginning. I was like the opposite of that. I, I had like a massive creative block, but I didn't fight it. I just kind of accepted it. And I mean, even now, I'm not that productive at all compared to normal. This creative and receptive, these were they're quite big actually. They're like a meter. They are the first pieces I did, like, and it's just kind of like what I'm going through, this like pendulum swing, this
Hmm.
polarity of like elation and depression, and like just like very like push and pull. And then after that, I did 3 sketches on liminality, which you have there. Actually, I have it right here. It's a small one, but I did a few of those, and like just thinking about this time when a liminal space is a space where things change, where things are like paradigm shift. Like we're in a time it's like unprecedented, where you have like the dark and the light like right next to each other, and so we're all experiencing this like complete like contrast, and it's like, what do you find in the middle of that? Like what's the crack, like you get the
Yes.
light, like where's so it's kind of philosophical, and yeah, it's just what I wanted to do, really. But it's also part of like another thematic kind of exhibition idea, body of work I have that I want to build on in the next year or so, which is a little bit more solar based
Well,
and a
and
little bit
the
more
benefit of this,
metaphysical.
the benefit of this is that it brings a lot of things into focus, right? Philosophy, the kind of tension and we're facing, but also that you can focus on the discipline of the line, of keeping your hand on the paper and illustrating.
Very meditative, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
I felt like I had to do something that was meditative, repetitive, symbolic. So it's like I'm thinking about this process at the same time. I think, like art is transformative, and um, like the way you communicate with images is not the same way you speak. You know, I'm not that great of expressing the thoughts, the inclinations I have, but when I can, I mean, that's why that's why people make music or dance or make art, is because we have to find ways to communicate what we're going through.
Yeah, and you have blessed us. And as we wind up, one of your paintings, I chose this as the last one to send you a virtual hug. And it is such a beautiful painting, I guess, to kind of bookend this conversation, about um, uh, art, art of our time, and where we are. That, we, again, one of the beautiful things about your story and our narratives, that it comes out of a certain struggle, right? And our salvation happens to be art, and art in public. We're very public with our work and our emotions. And I want to thank you so much for your time and your candor with us, and our viewers who are your fans. I'm super
No, it's
excited.
beautiful, and thank you too. And I think, we have community and we have to focus on that and be grateful for it in whatever form it is. So I'm really grateful to have you guys as part of a wider community. And, we grew up in very different places, but here we are, and we can like relate because we have a bit of a shared story somehow.
Oh, absolutely. And in our
Mm-hmm.
final minutes, I want to thank everybody, but also encourage you to ask Faith the question. She's here, and if you're willing to take a few questions before we sign off in about 6 minutes, that would be great. And again, I just want to tell you how what a privilege to journey with you in your work, and to understand it better, not just admire it for its artistic qualities, but for the deeper meaning of the work. And
Thanks, man. I just also feel like, I grew up in South Africa, that's so far away. And like, even back then, like we had like websites, right, that you would like keep an eye on, like Art
mhm.
Crimes or something,
Yeah,
or with the collective.
with Brett
And
Webb,
like
yeah.
now there's like Instagram and that, but like
Mhm.
before, yeah, like there was this kind of like new age of information that we've been able to all participate in, and kind of connects people from absolutely the different parts of the world, and that's incredible.
Well,
So like,
yeah, and it's not just the art, because it's the message, right? The conscious awakening of one's own self through uh, these powerful images. Even like I said, to you about uh, choosing the ending slide, and how impactful and emotional that felt for me, that you would do that, and that we have that, that's digital, and I can share with you, because it represents our time, because we want to be hugged, we want to be touched, and this is one way we do it, through this technology. But still, we know, that uh, nothing can replace human interaction. And we're really challenged. I know I'm very, very challenged with that at the moment.
absolutely. I mean, I think we all are. And if anything, I mean, of all the kind of awful things that are happening and are coming of this, of which there are many, um, hopefully we're all going to come out of it like a little bit more empathetic, a little bit more like grounded and like appreciative of each other, and like appreciative of the fact that like, even though, I'm an artist, like I'm used to being alone. It's not like hard for me to spend like
Hmm.
days by myself like drawing or something, but I miss my friends, like I miss people, and like just that like understanding that like we're not islands. I think that, and geographically too, not just within your own like city, but like like the whole world. Like this has affected like all the countries. So I just hope that like humanity, like there's
Yeah,
that.
I'm optimistic, but I would say this, that I'm in no rush to go back to what people are saying normal. There's a new normal, right? And nothing was ever normal. And that those of us who grew up under great strife, and are probably still in under great strife and all that. That's something many of us have known for many years, and that was the normal. And we can't accept, you know, I did a post today that Yasha Young posted up, and it spoke on this about returning to this this normal, which was greed and self-consumption. You know, we cannot continue in the path we've been. We just can't. We're too interdependent.
And I think that's gonna like resonate like within everybody, like in a very specific way individually, depending on their circumstance. But yeah, I definitely don't want to be as busy as I was. Like I want to slow down like a bit, you know, and like be a little bit more like thoughtful and contemplative and take my time on things. I feel like I've been much too rushed.
Yeah, and where does that focus lie in terms of, is it your personal life or your career as an artist? Because everybody's career as an artist is on hold at the moment, it seems.
Yeah, everything, like on all of it. You know, I want to have a meaningful life. I don't want it to whiz by without me paying attention.
Right. No, this moment definitely crystallizes a lot for us, especially when it comes to artistic life and ambitions. And it, you know, because it draws back our attention to relationships, and also like what we're dealing with, a new reality for us. So with that, Faith, I thank you so much for your art, your wisdom, your beautiful artwork all around the world. Your fans are here with you tonight and supporting you, and I'm sure wishing you well. And I look forward to what's next.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.